So in today's version of the Process of a Pro series, I want to recap exactly how you guys can be a full and complete IGL that knows exactly how to play in this new chapter and in this new year. I have made videos on how to IGL in the past, however, those have been pretty general, and I want to really go in depth of how you can truly improve your IGL skills and then perfect your craft. Now be sure to use code SonataYT in the Fortnite item shop if you guys do want to support me. Let's hop right into this video. So to begin, I want to go over the zone. Now something that all IGLs need to understand is that your enemy is not going to be the enemy players in the game. It's not going to be their weapons, it's not going to be them doing damage to you, it's not going to be anything player related. Your main enemy as an IGL is going to be the zone. So a lot of times I see IGLs that are focused on players fighting them and focus on enemy protection, while they should rather be focusing on finding a way to avoid zone. You need to scout, which is where you're going to be looking through a cone or various different ways to peek, and then you need to identify a path throughout your scouting, which means you look throughout the zone and see areas where there's going to be a larger amount of people or congested areas, and then areas in which there's a smaller amount of people or dead side areas. And then you need to identify which path is best and which path you're least likely to get eliminated on. And then lastly, you need to be able to implement a rotation. Essentially what implementing a rotation means is that you guys need to use stuff like mobility, use of mechanics, such as sprinting or slap juices. Also, you guys can abuse new augments. You basically just need to apply a rotation method in order to actually move yourself throughout the map in order to actually get into the storm eye. And once you get better, you'll be able to anticipate natural enemy movement patterns that people may make when you all are rotating when the zone starts to move. And then you're going to be able to early anticipate people's movements and then naturally avoid enemy players. The overall general gist of how to deal with zone as an IGL is to scout, path, rotate, and then avoid fights. Continually, your second largest enemy is going to be the terrain. This is essentially going to be stuff like mountains, indestructible buildings, areas of water. You need to scout and identify potential congested areas and places that will be tough to rotate out of. Then you need to path and rotate based upon that. Examples of congested areas and terrain around the map are going to be mountains, waterways, and buildings, because these are all things that could block you and lead to your getting eliminated. What I would recommend you guys do is look throughout when you guys are scouting, see the various different types of terrain that are on the map, see which enemy players are based up on the terrain, and see which way the zone pulls and what the terrain of the zone is going to look like. Then you guys should try to make a very informed decision based upon where the least players are and where the least amount of heavy terrain is, and then you should try to rotate through there. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that you should try to always rotate where there are the least players and where there's the least terrain. Using your mobility and your mechanics, you're naturally going to be able to get to zone quite quick. Obviously stuff will pop up like enemy players building, other rotation patterns happening. However, what's really important is that you focus on rotating out throughout this terrain in the best way possible. And then on top of the zone and terrain ideas, you guys should understand exactly when to rotate as well. What I would recommend you guys do is when you're scouting, try to assess what the different players around you have. As you play more and more competitive Fortnite, you're going to be able to recognize a very cool thing. You're going to be able to understand exactly what the enemy players around you have in terms of mobility and weapons. Once you're able to do this efficiently, you can determine when they're going to rotate, and then you can rotate yourself. So in terms of timing for rotations, what you guys should try to do is identify the area around you, see how enemy players are going to be moving, and depending on the zone during the endgame, you got to decide whether it's a good idea to rotate early or late. Because on some zones, if you rotate too early, everybody's going to be looking at you and you're most likely going to get lobby focused. Some zones, when you rotate too late, everybody's going to look back and try to eliminate you. So sometimes it's really good to have a middle ground or just have a general understanding of when to rotate based upon the lobby that you're in, and that's overall the idea for timing. Now, once you have all of these things mastered, such as zone, terrain, and timing, you need to really implement your decisions. Especially in the modern day game mode of duos, you need to be an authoritative IGL. This means that your decision needs to be the final decision for your team. The hard part of being an IGL is being sure in your decision, making sure that you think that your decision is going to win. You can become more confident in your decisions as you practice your skills more. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that more practice equals a more confident IGL decision maker. Another really important fact is that you're going to need a teammate that really trusts your decision. You need to make sure that you find someone that actually trusts what you're doing, trusts your ideas, and trusts your thought process. If you don't have someone like this, then it's all going to go to crap and you're not really going to be able to effectively rotate and play throughout the game. And speaking further on the aspect of teammates, you need to learn how to team control as well as an IGL. Now, a big part of being an IGL is obviously going to be rotating, doing the nuts and bolts parts of the mid game and the end game, basically commanding your team on how to play throughout the entire game. However, another big part of being an IGL is controlling your team and basically babysitting them and making sure that they're okay throughout the entire game. Some players that you'll be playing with will lose motivation or start tilting if something in the slightest goes wrong. It's your job truly to keep them in check and reassure them throughout the tournament so that their performance doesn't suffer. This will improve your overall consistency throughout the tournament, considering that your teammates won't be getting more tilted. They'll trust you to bring them back up when they're in their dip points. Overall, as an IGL, you're going to need to be able to motivate your team in order to continue playing and continue doing the best and implementing all of your tactics in order to do the best you can in the tournament. That's something that I find very overlooked when people try to IGL. They kind of more focus really on the aspect of truly IGLing rather than actually trying to control their team and motivate them, because nothing really works if your team is not motivated. So that should be one of your first priorities. And then truly the final aspect of being an IGL is bringing it all together. You need to be able to truly lead your team. You need to calm with confidence, which means that you need to only say stuff that really matters, but truly put your foot down about it. Be very confident in what you say. Try to be an authoritative figure, like I said before. And you need to consistently ensure that your team believes in you and understands your comms. So before you start playing with your teammate, be sure to talk to them, be like, hey, listen, this is how I comm. This is what this means, this is what that means. Essentially develop a system for them to understand. You also need to consistently ensure that your team is still believing in your ability to IGL. There's no such thing as a duo that works off of a half-measured IGL. Every single duo in the world that performs at a high level has one direct person that's in command that makes the final decision most of the times. That can switch based on tournament to tournament, but when they're in the midst of a tournament, there's never uncertainty about who's in charge. So that's something that you need to make sure that your team knows. And continuing on the idea of calming, you need to make sure they understand what to calm and how to perform based off of your comms. In terms of what they should calm, if they're a fragger, if they're an aggressive player, they need to be focused more on calming stuff about getting eliminations and enemy players around you. If they're more of a passive player, they need to calm stuff about what they see, helping support you, watching your flanks, looking around the various areas, blocking off your back, dropping you mats. That's the whole point of what comms are for the other duo member. And then based off of your comms, they need to understand exactly how to perform, what to do. For example, if you're looking at high ground, you're like, hey, let's take height. Your teammates just start looking at high ground and maybe looking for an area to spray out high ground in order to retake it. It's just a general idea of what you guys can do. That'll obviously come with time played with them and chemistry built, but that's a very important fact for most IGLs. And then lastly, your comms overall and your leadership should be around giving necessities. This is stuff such as rotation, planning, scouting, or any enemies that you want to try and avoid or you want to try to rush. That's the general idea for how to lead truly as an IGL. If you implement all of these decisions based upon all of the different zones and aspects of the game, you're definitely going to improve at being an IGL. It's a very advanced way of learning how to rotate throughout the map and learning how to control your own team. They're both their different battles and you guys need to master both of them. But yeah, guys, that is the video on exactly how to IGL. I really did enjoy making this video considering that I used to be quite a prominent IGL myself. I really did enjoy going back and recapping some of the stuff that I would think about when I was playing in tournaments. A lot of my friends also tell me that a lot of times when they IGL in the more modern day competitive scene, it's a lot more difficult to control your teammate rather than to actually understand how to IGL. The basics of being an IGL are pretty simple. Learning them obviously is a bit difficult, but what is one of the hardest parts is truly controlling your team and motivating them to truly try their best in this tournament all the time. But that's about it for this video, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.